Good. Pre-reading information for The Lesson, written by Toni-Cade-Bambara. Before reading the story, there are some things the reader should know. First, there are some words with which the reader may be unfamiliar. For example, a junk man was a person who collected other people's unwanted junk and often fixed them up and resold them, such as Sanford & Son, if you know where that is. A pinafore was a girl's dress and usually used starch to make the skirt stand out and the collar crisp. A jumper was also a girl's dress, but was made differently. This is Simplicity's popular pinafore pattern. And this is Simplicity's pattern number 5638 of a jumper dress. While this book was written in 1972, it hails back to the early 1960s in New York. Specifically, the children in the story all live in Harlem. At this time, African Americans were more likely to try to assimilate into white culture when it came to hair and dress. This is why the arrival of a woman with nappy hair was so unique to the narrator. Nappy hair was the term used for natural African American hair at the time, and which became popular in the 1970s. This first drawing might have been what Sylvia saw when she described the woman as having nappy hair and being as black as hell. The second drawing is a representation of how the children might have been wearing their hair in the 1960s. According to the online Mayo Clinic, vitiligo is a disease that causes loss of skin color and blotches. They go on to say that it can affect any part of your body, including hair, inside of the mouth, and the eyes. Socioeconomically, there was a huge gap between whites and African Americans in the 1960s. For example, in Harlem, these children above are sharing 1 cup of milk, which is all they have for a meal, while white parents on Fifth Avenue were wasting $35 on a toy clown for their children. Educationally, students were still segregated by race, even though Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka legally desegregated schools in 1954. The schools were separate, but in no way equal. In addition, few African Americans attended college. Therefore, Miss Moore was unique in their community, especially in a community in which people could barely afford to keep their children fed, so education was not as high of a priority. The civil rights movement had started by the time the story got started. Martin Luther King Jr., however, may or may not have given his iconic speech, "I Have a Dream." However, the children in the story are largely unaware of what is going on in the world outside of their own community. Therefore, when the narrator says, "Poor people have to wake up and demand their share of the pie," the kids have not yet experienced the above events where poor people are demanding their rights, like in the second picture of the Million Man March. F.A.O. Schwarz is a toy store in New York, or was. It was established in 1870 by Frederick August Otto Schwarz as Schwarz Brothers Importers in New York City. According to www.fao.com, Frederick was the youngest of the Schwarz brothers and had a vision to establish a magical toy emporium that featured extraordinary one-of-a-kind toys from all over the world while creating a theatrical experience to showcase merchandise in a way that would bring it to life. F.A.O. Schwarz, the man, not the store, opened a second store in New York City in 1876, and with it created one of the first mail-order catalog businesses in the United States of America. Frederick renamed his store F.A.O. Schwarz in 1900 and was considered by many the largest toy dealer in the world. These pictures are from the actual F.A.O. Schwarz store in New York City, which has since closed. But let's not forget the literary terms we have to know. One of the main terms is dialect. According to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, dialect is defined as a form of language that is spoken in a particular area and that uses some of its own words, grammar, and pronunciations. Another term to remember is point of view. As you should already know, point of view is the viewpoint from which the story is told. This story is told by Sylvia, who is a young African-American girl who lives in Harlem, New York. Remember, there are different types.
Created using Powtoon.